So there I was, sitting in the defendant's chair of a military courtroom, wearing what looked like a chrome-plated colander on my head, facing charges that would make a space pirate blush. The official charge: unauthorized telepathic espionage in violation of Articles 15, 23, and 47 of the Galactic Military Code. The unofficial charge: being too stupid to say no when a mad scientist asked for volunteers. My name's Jake Morrison, and 3 weeks ago I was just another cadet at Terra Military Academy, dreaming of a boring career in logistics. Now, I'm apparently humanity's first accidental mind reader, and the brass wants my head on a platter. Well, they want what's left of my head after they figure out how to remove this alien contraption that's been superglued to my skull for the past 21 days. Judge Admiral Voss sat behind her bench like a gargoyle in dress blues, her steel-gray hair pulled back so tight it could deflect plasma bolts. "The court will come to order," she barked, slamming her gavel with enough force to crack concrete. "We are here to determine whether Cadet Morrison's actions constitute treason, heroism, or just spectacular stupidity." Commander Hartwell, the prosecutor, stood up like he was accepting an Academy Award. Everything about him screamed overcompensating, from his perfectly pressed uniform to his artificially whitened teeth. "Your Honor, the prosecution will prove that Cadet Morrison willfully violated military protocol, engaged in unauthorized intelligence gathering, and endangered the very fabric of our chain of command." My defense attorney, Lieutenant Piper, looked like she'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. She kept shuffling papers and clearing her throat every 5 seconds. Your Honor, the defense maintains that my client was simply, well, you see, the device was malfunctioning and, Spit it out, Lieutenant, Judge Voss growled. "He couldn't help it, ma'am. The helmet is stuck." As if on cue, the device on my head started humming like a broken refrigerator, and I caught a stray thought from Commander Hartwell. Did I remember to delete my browser history before coming to court? I tried not to smirk. This was going to be a long day. The courtroom was packed with military personnel, reporters, and what I could only assume were alien diplomats taking notes for their humans, threat or entertainment. Reports. The Zephyrian mind-reading helmet, which looked like it had been designed by someone who thought aerodynamic, meant more spikes, sat on my head like a techno crown of thorns. "The prosecution calls its first witness," Hartwell announced, straightening his tie with the confidence of a man who'd never had his thoughts broadcasted to an entire room. Oh, if only he knew what was coming. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been living the dream of every military cadet, trying not to fall asleep during Professor Weiss's xenotechnology and applied stupidity class. My roommate Tank Rodriguez was sitting next to me, using his textbook as a pillow and drooling on Chapter 12. "Morrison." "Rodriguez." Professor Weiss's voice cracked like a whip. "Since you both seem fascinated by the inside of your eyelids, perhaps you'd like to volunteer for today's demonstration." Tank jerked awake, leaving a puddle of saliva on his book. "Did someone say lunch?" Professor Weiss was the kind of man who made you wonder how he'd survived this long without accidentally stepping into an airlock. His wild gray hair defied at least 3 laws of physics, and his lab coat looked like it had been used to clean up after a rainbow explosion. But he was brilliant, in that terrifying way that brilliant people often are. "Today, class, we'll be examining a genuine Zephyrian neural interface device captured from their scout ship last month." He held up what looked like a metallic brain scanner crossed with a medieval torture device. "The Zephyrians use these helmets to share tactical information telepathically across their command structure." The entire class leaned forward. Alien tech was always cool, even if it usually tried to kill you. Now, according to our xenobiologists, these devices should only work on Zephyrian neural patterns. Human brains are supposedly too primitive to interface with their technology. Professor Weiss grinned in that way that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Who wants to prove them wrong? My hand shot up before my brain could file an objection. "Look, When you're trying to impress your classmates and maybe get on the good side of Captain Elena Vasquez, who sits 3 rows up, you make questionable decisions. Excellent. Mr. Morrison, if you would. Professor Weiss gestured to a chair that had more wires than a NASA control room. Tank grabbed my arm. Dude, remember what happened to Jenkins when he volunteered for the gravity simulator? Jenkins got better, I said, though we both knew Jenkins now walked with a permanent lean to the left. I sat in the chair, and Professor Weiss lowered the helmet onto my head with all the ceremony of a coronation. It was heavier than it looked, and cold enough to freeze brain cells. Now, the device should simply sit there and do nothing, Professor Weiss explained to the class. Human neural patterns are entirely incompatible with Zephyrian technology, so this is perfectly safe. That should have been my first clue that nothing about this was going to be safe. The helmet activated with a sound like a fusion reactor having hiccups. Suddenly, my brain felt like someone had plugged it into the Academy's main computer. Information flooded my consciousness, not my information, but thoughts from everyone around me. Tank, man, I hope they serve pizza in the cafeteria today. Captain Vasquez, why do I always fall for the guys who volunteer for stupid experiments? Random Cadet 3, I wonder if anyone noticed I forgot to wear underwear today. Professor, I said, my voice sounding weird in my own ears, I think something's wrong. Professor Weiss was frantically checking his instruments. Fascinating. The neural patterns are synchronizing. This should be impossible. Can you turn it off? I asked, suddenly privy to way more information about my classmates than any sane person should ever want. Well, that's the thing, Professor Weiss said, his excitement dimming slightly. The removal mechanism seems to have engaged automatically. What does that mean? It means, my dear boy, that the helmet has decided you're its new best friend. And that's how I became the first human in history to get stuck wearing an alien mind-reading device that wouldn't come off. What started as a classroom accident quickly turned into the most embarrassing superpower in military history. Within hours, I discovered that the helmet's range wasn't limited to my immediate vicinity. I could pick up thoughts from across the academy, then across the city, and eventually, much to my horror, across the galaxy. The first enemy transmission I intercepted happened during what should have been a routine war games exercise. I was sitting in the strategy room, trying to focus on our simulated battle plans while filtering out Tank's constant mental commentary about sandwich preferences, when suddenly my brain tuned into a frequency that definitely wasn't human. The thoughts came through like a badly translated instruction manual. Attack Formation Zeta 7 initiates at dawn cycle. Terran defenses at Proxima Station remain unaware of our approach. Victory brings glory to the hive mind. I nearly fell out of my chair. Professor Weiss? I think I'm picking up actual enemy communications. Professor Weiss, who was busy trying to explain to Colonel Barnes why one of his cadets was permanently attached to alien technology, paused mid-sentence. I'm sorry, what? The Zephyrians. They're planning an attack on Proxima Station tomorrow morning. Colonel Barnes, a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite in disappointment, stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Cadet, are you claiming that helmet is intercepting classified enemy transmissions? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds crazy, but... It sounds crazy because it is crazy, Colonel Barnes interrupted. Proxima Station is on the other side of the galaxy. Even if that device worked, which it shouldn't, the signal delay alone would make real-time communication impossible. But the thoughts kept coming. Clearer now, surprise attack commences in 18 standard hours. Human defensive grid shows weakness in sectors 7 through 12. I tried to explain what I was hearing, but military bureaucracy moves at the speed of molasses in a black hole. Colonel Barnes wanted forms filled out in triplicate. The communications department wanted to run tests that would take 3 days. The intelligence division wanted me to file a report through proper channels, which would take approximately 6 months and require signatures from 14 different officers. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there with alien battle plans streaming directly into my brain like the galaxy's worst television channel. Look, I told Tank during our evening meal, what if I'm right? What if there really is an attack planned? Tank was working his way through his third helping of something the cafeteria generously called meat. Dude, you worry too much. Besides, what are you going to do? It's not like you can just call up Fleet Command and say, "Hi, this is some random cadet with an alien hat, and I think you should move your entire defensive fleet." But that's exactly what I ended up doing. Well, not exactly. What I actually did was hack into the Academy's communication system, patch myself through to Proxima Station's defense coordinator, and warn them about the incoming attack. I may have also mentioned specific attack vectors, enemy ship configurations, and tactical weaknesses in their defense grid. The attack came exactly as I'd predicted. Proxima Station, forewarned and repositioned according to my intelligence, repelled the Zephyrian assault with minimal casualties. It should have been a moment of triumph for humanity. Instead, I was arrested for unauthorized access to military communications breach of command protocol, impersonating an intelligence officer, and my personal favorite, conduct unbecoming of a cadet who should have minded his own damn business. General Blackwood himself showed up to read me the charges. He was the kind of officer who made parade grounds nervous, all sharp angles and cold efficiency, like someone had taught a calculator how to wear a uniform. "Cadet Morrison," he said, his voice carrying the warmth of a neutron star, "your little stunt may have saved lives, but you violated the very foundation of military order. We cannot have junior personnel making executive decisions based on alleged telepathic intelligence." "Alleged? Sir, I prevented a massacre." "You got lucky," General Blackwood replied. "And luck is not a valid basis for military strategy." That's when I realized I wasn't just in trouble for breaking protocol. I was in trouble for being right when I should have been wrong. Back in the courtroom, Commander Hartwell was putting on a performance that would have made Shakespeare weep. He'd called Professor Weiss to the stand, and it was going about as well as you'd expect. "Professor Weiss," Hartwell said, gesturing dramatically, "please explain to the court how this alleged mind-reading device operates." Professor Weiss adjusted his glasses, which were held together with what appeared to be military-grade duct tape. "Well, you see, the Zephyrian neural interface creates a quantum entanglement between the user's consciousness and the collective Zephyrian psychic network. It's quite fascinating, really. The quantum resonance frequency modulates it approximately." Professor Judge Voss interrupted, "Please pretend you're talking to people who didn't spend 8 years studying theoretical xeoneurology." "Oh, right. Well, it reads minds, alien minds specifically, though it seems to have adapted to Mr. Morrison's neural patterns in ways that violate several fundamental laws of physics." Hartwell pounced. "So you admit that this device shouldn't work on humans at all?" "Correct. It's rather like trying to play a Beethoven symphony on a kazoo. Theoretically impossible, but apparently Morrison's brain is more kazoo-like than we initially assumed." I tried not to take that personally. "And yet," Hartwell continued, "Cadet Morrison claims he received detailed military intelligence through this impossible device." "Well, yes, but—" No further questions. Lieutenant Piper stood up for cross-examination, immediately tripped over her own briefcase, and spent 30 seconds gathering scattered papers while the entire courtroom watched. Professor Weiss, is it possible that the device is, actually working as described?" "Oh, absolutely. The quantum resonance patterns clearly indicate—" "I object," Hartwell shouted. "The witness is speculating about impossible technology." "Sustained," Judge Voss ruled. "The witness will limit himself to observable facts." Professor Weiss looked confused. "But the quantum measurements clearly show." "Observable facts only, Professor." "Well, the fact is, the device appears to be working perfectly, despite being theoretically impossible. Though I suppose that's not very helpful. Then Tank took the stand, and things went from bad to worse. "State your name for the record," Hartwell said. "Corporal Maxwell Rodriguez, but everyone calls me Tank 'cause I ate a whole tank of ice cream once. Well, not the actual tank, just what was in it, but—" "Just answer the questions, Corporal," Judge Voss said wearily. Hartwell smiled like a predator who'd spotted wounded prey. "Corporal Rodriguez, how would you describe Cadet Morrison's behavior since acquiring this device?" Tank thought for a moment, which was always dangerous. "Well, he started acting all weird and stuff. Like he'd answer questions nobody asked, and he kept telling me to think quieter, which doesn't even make sense, right? And then there was that time he told me not to think about naked aliens, which made me think about naked aliens. And then he got all mad because apparently he could hear me thinking about naked aliens." The courtroom erupted in snickers. I wanted to crawl under my chair. "So you're saying his behavior was erratic and unpredictable?" Hartwell pressed. "Nah, man. Jake's always been weird. This was like super weird, but in a helpful way. Like when he told me not to eat that sandwich from the vending machine because it had been there since last Tuesday, and he was right because when I didn't eat it, Billy ate it instead and spent 3 days in the medical bay." Hartwell looked like he was developing a headache. No further questions. But the real chaos started when the device began malfunctioning during testimony. The humming got louder, and suddenly I wasn't just reading minds, I was broadcasting my thoughts to everyone in the courtroom. "This is ridiculous," my mental voice echoed through the room. "Hartwell's just mad because his wife left him for a Martian botanist." Commander Hartwell went red. "Your Honor, I object to having my personal life wait. How did he know about that?" "Because you've been thinking about it non-stop for the past hour," I replied, both aloud and telepathically. "Also, you're worried your hair plugs are showing." Judge Voss banged her gavel. "Order. Mr. Morrison, control your thoughts." "I'm trying. It's not like this thing comes with an instruction manual." That's when I picked up something that made my blood run cold. A stray thought from the back of the courtroom, from someone who was trying very hard not to think about anything important. The boy is getting too close to the truth. The operation must remain secret. I turned around and saw General Blackwood sitting in the gallery, his face perfectly composed, his thoughts screaming with guilt. The device's malfunction was getting worse by the minute. What started as a low hum had escalated to a sound like a dying whale, and my accidental mind reading had turned into a full-blown telepathic broadcast system. Everyone in the courtroom was suddenly privy to everyone else's thoughts, and it was about as pleasant as you'd expect. Judge Voss's thoughts: "Why did I ever leave private practice?" Commander Hartwell: "Don't think about the hair plugs. Don't think about the hair plugs." Lieutenant Piper: "Maybe I should have gone to law school on Earth instead of Mars." But cutting through all the mental noise was General Blackwood's carefully controlled panic. He was trying to suppress his thoughts, but decades of military discipline couldn't overcome alien technology run a macaque. "The Morrison boy knows too much," his mind whispered. "The Proxima Station intelligence was supposed to be wrong. The attack should have succeeded. How did he intercept our communications to the Zephyrians?" I stood up so fast my chair fell over. "You've been feeding information to the enemy." The courtroom exploded into chaos, but I wasn't done. The device was amplifying everything now, turning General Blackwood's carefully hidden memories into a mental movie for everyone present. Images flooded the collective consciousness, secret meetings with Zephyrian commanders, encoded transmissions detailing human defensive positions, the payment transfers to offshore accounts. General Blackwood had been playing both sides of the war for years, prolonging the conflict to maintain his position and wealth. The war was supposed to last another decade, Blackwood's thoughts continued, now broadcast to the entire room. Steady promotions, defense contracts, political leverage. But the Morrison boys' interference is ruining everything. General Blackwood tried to run, but Tank, bless his simple, loyal heart, tackled him before he reached the door. Nobody runs out on Jake's trial, Tank declared, sitting on the general like he was a particularly shifty piece of furniture. Judge Voss was banging her gavel so hard I was afraid she'd break it. Order. I will have order in this courtroom. But the mental revelations weren't finished. Through the chaos of everyone's thoughts, I caught something else, a planned strike on the courtroom itself. Blackwood had arranged for Zephyrian terrorists to attack during the trial, eliminating me and anyone else who might piece together his conspiracy. Everyone needs to get down now, I shouted. Incoming attack in 30 seconds. How could you possibly know? Commander Hartwell began, then stopped as the building shook with the impact of energy weapons. The Zephyrians came through the windows like some kind of demented SWAT team, all tentacles and attitude. But thanks to the mental broadcast, everyone in the courtroom knew exactly what they were thinking, where they were aiming, and what they were planning to do next. It was the most coordinated defense in military history, orchestrated by a malfunctioning alien helmet and powered by collective mind reading. Judge Voss used her gavel as a weapon. Commander Hartwell discovered he was actually pretty good at combat when he wasn't worried about his appearance. Even Lieutenant Piper managed to trip one of the attackers with her scattered legal briefs. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When the dust settled, we had 7 captured Zephyrians, 1 traitor general under Tank's considerable weight, and approximately 50 witnesses to the most bizarre court case in galactic history. Well, Judge Voss said, straightening her robes and looking remarkably composed for someone who'd just used legal documents as throwing weapons, I think we can safely say the charges against Cadet Morrison are dismissed. The device finally powered down with a sound like a deflating balloon, leaving everyone's thoughts mercifully private again. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the Academy's medical bay while Professor Weiss attempted to remove the Zephyrian helmet with what appeared to be a combination of advanced alien technology and a crowbar. The neural bonding was more extensive than I initially calculated, he muttered, poking at the device with various instruments. The quantum entanglement created a semi-permanent connection between your consciousness and the helmet's processing matrix. In English, Professor? It doesn't want to come off. General Morrison, no relation, unfortunately had arrived to handle the aftermath of General Blackwood's arrest. Unlike Blackwood, she seemed to actually care about things like preventing interstellar war and not being a traitorous snake. Cadet Morrison, she said, on behalf of Terra Command, I want to personally apologize for the court-martial and offer you any assignment you'd like. Intelligence Division would kill to have someone with your abilities. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Thank you, ma'am, but I think I'd like to stay right here. Here? At the Academy? Yes, ma'am. Tank still needs help passing basic math, and someone needs to keep Professor Weiss from accidentally starting another interdimensional incident. Professor Weiss looked up from his work. That was one time. And technically, the portal only stayed open for 47 minutes. General Morrison smiled. Very well, Cadet. Though I should warn you the helmet removal was only partially successful. As if on cue, I caught a stray thought from Tank, who was standing in the hallway. I wonder if they have pudding in the cafeteria today. Partially successful how? I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. You'll retain some limited telepathic ability, Professor Weiss explained. Nothing like the full-scale mind reading you experienced, but you'll occasionally pick up surface thoughts from people nearby. Great. Just what every college student needs, the ability to hear what their professors really think of their essays. Tank poked his head through the doorway. Hey Jake, you done being a telepathic superhero? 'Cause I could really use help studying for tomorrow's exam. I grinned. Sure, Tank. But maybe think a little quieter while we study, okay? Tank looked confused. Think quieter? How do you think quieter? Never mind. Let's go get some of that pudding you're thinking about. Dude, how did you know I was thinking about pudding? Some things, I decided, were better left unexplained. As we walked toward the cafeteria, I caught fragments of thoughts from students and faculty around us. Professor Martinez wondering if anyone would notice if he canceled tomorrow's physics lab. Captain Vasquez thinking about whether she should ask me out now that I was technically a war hero. 2 freshman cadets planning to sneak out after lights out. It wasn't the superpower anyone dreams of having, but it was mine. And honestly, not after everything that had happened, the ability to occasionally read minds seemed like a fair trade for preventing galactic war and exposing one of the most elaborate conspiracies in military history. Plus, Tank was never going to fail another exam as long as I was around to help him study. And really, isn't that what friendship is all about? Well, that and making sure your best friend doesn't think too loudly about sandwiches during important military briefings. Some battles are won with weapons and strategy. Others are won with malfunctioning alien technology and the power of friendship. Both are equally valid approaches to saving the galaxy, though I'd recommend the friendship approach if you want to avoid getting court-martialed. The cafeteria did have pudding that day, chocolate, just like Tank had hoped. And that's how I became the first human to accidentally prevent an interstellar war while stuck wearing an alien mind-reading device that wouldn't come off. Not exactly the military career I'd planned, but definitely more interesting than logistics.